And the title of that talk is Risk Language and Risk Messaging, which is truly a very important topic certainly to people in NCI. So without further ado, let's welcome Carl Pritchard.
Thanks so much. And by the way, Maggie, just like a nice segue, a lovely lead in to all of this. So job well done on that particular score. Always like it when somebody tees up the ball very well, because she was talking about the importance of making sure that our message is clear, that what we're saying has basically a gospel good news behind it, that it has some positivity with it. All that ties with the land of risk. I'm sorry, Carl. Does not tie with the land of risk. Come on, look at the picture you've got here. It's dark, it's cold, it's foreboding. Yeah, no, it's not. It's actually the way people tend to perceive risk. They do. They tend to look at this, and those of you who've been around PMI Montgomery County for a long time, those of you who have been in NCI for a long time, you know that I just keep showing up, and my gospel doesn't change. And I think that's one of the most important things we can get across in the next hour or so. We can actually get through the whole notion of, okay, so the gospel doesn't change. We've got lots of good news that we're going to be sharing here. And really, the key is going to be to ensure that we have the same message and that we're getting others to say the message that we're saying, to get us to all say it in kind of the same way, to get us on the same page. By the way, it was funny. Utilize was one of the words that Maggie said was like, and a couple of people in the chat were like, "Amen, amen." I hate utilize. Oh, I utilize a lot. So I'm probably like the anarchist on the other side of all of this. There is a certain speak that goes with risk management, and we get to set that speak. The key being that it's upbeat. That's right. Risk is a happy place. Most people, Carl, risk is not a happy place. You can try and sell it. PMI's been doing this for years. They've been arguing that risk is both threat and opportunity. Yeah, they've been making that argument since the dawn of humankind, and they're right. It is. It's both sides. It's complete. It's well stated. One of the things that really trips up a lot of people, one of the things that really trips up a lot of people is the whole notion of they don't even know how to say risk. They'll say, "Oh, I was in an accident yesterday. Yeah, that was a big risk." No, if you were in an accident yesterday, that's an issue. It's something that's already happened. You've got the language wrong. And we need to be the ones who rein people in and get them to speak the risk language and speak it well. That's really the biggest challenge. Making sure that it's clear, making sure that it is something that we all mutually understand and get. By the way, as we go through our time together, I never like to be the only person in the room who's basically guiding the conversation. Toward that end, I do keep an eye on the chat. I do. So if you have something that you really, really want to just dive in on and go, okay, now let's go down this bumpy road. Okay. Just put it in the chat and we will go down that bumpy road together. We'll all go there. So we've got the risk message. Oh, and somebody already said risk register. You know, I did an entire presentation on the risk register for PMI Montgomery County about a year and a half ago. Where were you? Yeah, just kidding. But realistically, yeah, how we frame out the risk register is one of those ways that we actually get across our risk message. That's really going to be a big deal. But first and foremost, we need to know where we are. We need to know where we are. The DC area. Wow, what a strange place, isn't it? Those of you who are from foreign lands, I happen to be originally from Ohio. Wow, a foreign land. Then I moved to Maine, yet another foreign land. And DC is just a culture beyond imagination. It really is. Oh, Steve just put building alliances. Just so you know, we're going there. I even have a slide with that title. Oh, Steve. Where in Ohio? Go blue, Ruby. Come now. Where in Ohio? Columbiana, Ohio. Used to be the biggest little town in Ohio. Now it's simply a map dot. Just a little map dot of a city. But Columbiana, Ohio, kind of an interesting thing. I grew up believing that soda, like Coca-Cola, 7-Up, soda was called pop. In fact, when I go back home, yeah, thank you. I go back home and everybody's talking about, would you like a pop? And to me, it's music to my ears. It really is. It's so nice because we're speaking the same language. We're speaking the same language. We're trying to create a culture. Andy Voltax wins the award for best chat comment, even though we're only 5 minutes in here, because he said DC and culture are mutually exclusive. Yeah, I do love that. But the whole idea here is you frame the risk message. You frame the risk language. You do. You get a big difference when you're the one who's controlling how things are being said. You really do. You set the tone, you steer the process, and some people set the tone this way. When I actually was the author of the risk chapter of the Guide to the PMBOK, yeah, did you know that somebody actually writes the PMBOK? Yeah. How sad is that? Yeah. Get a life, Carl. But for PMBOK 4, I was the author of the risk management chapter. Dun, 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 dun. And I went to the author of the program manager for the entire PMBOK, and I said, hey, Cindy, we got to do something here. Do we have to do this whole opportunity thing? She said, yep. It's like, okay, fine. I was not enamored of opportunity as a risk thing. And what's interesting is I have joined the choir. I am a believer now in risk as opportunity. One company, by the way, that does this better than anybody else. You see that treasure chest there? You see it? On my screen, it's over there. Yeah, but looking at this, that treasure chest, one company that did that extraordinarily well back in the 90s, in fact, I had the honor of working with ABB. Some of you have heard of them. ASEA Brown Boveri. They make power plants, transmission distribution systems, that kind of stuff. Good ads in airports. That's ABB. And working with ABB, it was kind of fascinating because they figured out a way to make the opportunity side of risk management positive and non-artificial. That's the problem with a lot of people. Let's go through and do an opportunity assessment. What opportunities does this project present? Please, come on. Even I can't stand that. However, when they do presentations to senior executive management, I think they're geniuses. I really do. You want to talk about somebody in a risk-aware environment? It's the ABBers. It really is. And the reason I say that is because when they do the presentations to management, we've all been in on one of those. That presentation to management where you go in and management goes, well, tell us what the big things we need to worry about are. And normally it's, well, bad thing, really bad thing, nightmarish thing, evil, and then you die. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And everybody's like, wow, that was perhaps the single most depressing little jaunt I've taken in a long, long time. By contrast, at ABB, every time they identify a threat to senior management, every time they have to say, here's the bad thing that may happen. But if it does come to pass, here's the good news. Here's the good news. Oh, wow. What a different take. It goes from this back to this. It's wonderful. It really is, because it opens the door for people to look at opportunity without making it sound so blessed. Let's look at the good side. Oh, please just shoot me now. No, we are setting an environment, they are setting an environment where they have clarity on the fact they want to focus on risk presents a host of good news. It really does. Yeah, when I totaled my first PT Cruiser, yeah, this man drives in style. Yeah, but when I totaled my first PT Cruiser, I total a car about every 10 years. It's a gift, really. When I totaled my first PT Cruiser in '04, kind of an interesting experience because I was thinking it was, did I drive an AMC Gremlin 2? No. But the beauty of it was that I got to go out and pick another car. By the way, my PT Cruiser was hit head on by a Peterbilt semi, and I walked away. Yeah, hit head on by a Peterbilt semi, and I walked away. So what did I do? I went out and bought another PT Cruiser. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Why? Because I saw it as risk reward. I saw it as nothing but good news. The fact that I could walk away from getting whacked by a Peterbilt semi, that's a really, really good day. That really is a good day. And, oh, this is beautiful. I have people who are making suggestions about the upcoming slides. This is absolutely wonderful. And we are going right there. And, oh, cybersecurity awareness. This is really a good point, Walter. The good news of ransomware. More people are aware of phishing expeditions. They're aware of cybersecurity. They're aware that there's a reason to invest in cybersecurity. All that stuff has come to bear, largely because we are now aware, thanks to the whole ransomware experience. So what are we worried about? I can't believe I was able to find the graphic in the lower right. I thought that was kind of bizarre. But what do we worry about? Well, the clock, dying, being in accidents, accidentally finding a treasure trove in the bottom of our commode. Yeah. What do we actually worry about? What do we sweat about? Oh, I think that's actually flushing your money down the toilet. That's probably what that's all about. But that notwithstanding, remember, first and foremost, risk is a future phenomenon which has not yet occurred. Oh, so the risk event has already sailed on this one. But when that was still a cherry-looking ancient vehicle, what was the risk event? And this is not a rhetorical question. It's not a rhetorical question. I'm kind of curious what you think. Prior to this whole mess happening, what risk should they have been worrying about? What was the risk event? Brake failure. Okay, Conrad, that's an interesting answer to that. Death. Oh, but Bradford added to that in case of front end collision. Okay. Driving, injury, death. Notice where we go. And I want to thank you for this because you all did exactly what I wanted you to do. You went to one word answers. One word answers. T. are bad in risk management. They really are. If we're going to talk about clarity and the language of risk and making sure that everybody is preaching the same gospel, well, then, excuse me, we need to have some headlights. Yeah, there you go. We need to have some consistency here. Is the risk event the wreck? We could be in a wreck and get injured. We could be in a wreck and destroy the car. We could be in a wreck and hurt somebody else. Wow. And even then, we're still not talking about what caused it all. What caused that wreck? That's the other big question here. We need to know. A deer. Catherine Jordan, thank you so much for that. I'm not even going there today. No, shockingly, I'm not going to talk about the deer. Texting. I don't have the slide in this deck, but a guy who was sitting on my front lawn when the officers and the emergency team arrived. A guy had wrecked his car coming up Wilson Place, and the cop kept asking him over and over again, why, how could you possibly flip a car over on a residential street marked at 25 miles an hour? And his answer, oh, I was not speeding. And he said, I didn't say you were speeding. I'm just trying to figure out how you flip over a car on a residential street marked at 25 miles an hour. And his reply was, I was not speeding. And he said, okay, let me ask you the question again. What caused the wreck? And he said, oh, I hit that van over there. When I hit the van, it flipped my car over. And he said, even at hitting a van, even at hitting the van, you still shouldn't have flipped your car over at 25 miles. I was not speeding. Well, what were you doing that caused you to hit the van? And he said, well, my girlfriend sent me an important text. And I'm listening to this going, shut up. Shut up. For crying out loud. One word now, lawyer. Yeah. Holy smokes. I am listening to this guy and he keeps defending himself. I was not speeding. No, I was texting. Like that somehow made it better. What caused the wreck is really the heart and soul of getting to risk. It's the proactive side of risk management. And if we're trying to figure out what caused the wreck, wow, could be one of any myriad number of things. We need cause and effect. Rush hour, tornado, cell phone, there you go. Stampede. Yeah. We need cause and effect. What's sad is most people want to throw out one-word answers. One-word answers to risk. When somebody says, what's the risk? Weather. Weather is not a risk. Ooh, Sherrod offered a really brilliant idea here. Said, do a root cause analysis and ask the 5 whys. For those of you who don't know what the 5 whys are, it's basically this slide. Why? Why did the accident occur? And you give me an answer. Because we hit another car. Why'd you hit another car? Well, we hit another car because we were looking at our cell. Why were you looking at your cell? Because my girlfriend texted me. Why did your girlfriend text you? Because she wanted to let me know she's gone into labor. Oh, why has she gone into labor? Because she's pregnant. Oh, why? So, what caused the wreck? A pregnant girlfriend. That's twisted, but it does take us back to looking at the whys. We need to ask the question. Without the cause, knowing what the risk event is pretty useless. So, first things first. The next time you get together for a risk identification session, the next time you're going to even have the risk conversation, there. What's the event that may happen and the thing it may cause? What's the event that may happen and the thing it may cause? Now, Denise wants me to go down the road of probability. Oh, I love talking probability. I really do. But you know what? You can't even start having the probability conversation until you know the cause and the effect. I may whack a deer causing minor damage to my car. There you go. Probability actually pretty high. Many people have the whack a deer experience. I may whack a deer causing a grisly and horrible death to a human being. Wow, what's the probability? Whew, much, much lower. This is why we need to have this much of the conversation consistent. The next time you're in a meeting, somebody's talking risk, and somebody says weather or any one word answer to risk, this is your opportunity. It's a great time to be the risk language master. It really is. Because what you're going to do is you're going to look at them and say, what aspect of the weather is the real event? Is it that we may have a tornado? Is it that we may have, and Steve said, zombie apocalypse. I like that. Yeah. Zombie apocalypse may be forthcoming, causing whatever. But we want to make sure that we've got events. We want to make sure that we've identified the cause and effect, the if-then statement. I don't care how you frame it out, but if you are the first one to frame it out, you win. I have a really kind of intriguing bookshelf. I really do, because my bookshelf is filled primarily with 3 books. How can you have a bookshelf filled with 3 books? Well, let's see. I've got dictionaries. I've got every kind of dictionary you could possibly imagine. I really do. I have the Dictionary of Scottish Phrase and Fable. What? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've got dictionaries. And the beauty of writing a dictionary is that you're never wrong. Once you write the dictionary, you're it. By the way, if you are looking for the ultimate dictionary of phrase and fable, and mine's a slightly outdated copy, it's called Brewer's Dictionary of Phrase and Fable. Oh, wow. You know, the beauty of it is this tells you where phrases came from. Things like, oh, letting the cat out of the bag. Yeah, things like that. It explains the history of all of those. And the reason I love having just, oh, geez, probably better side of a couple dozen dictionaries up here and more copies of Bartlett's Familiar Quotations from the 3rd edition to the present. The reason is because just want to know what those words mean, the etymology, the history, and whoever decides what the etymology and the history is of any language. And this goes back to something Maggie was talking about in the first hour here. If you create the language, you own the conversation. You really do. It's so much fun. I love being the guy who wrote the risk chapter of the PMBOK. Why? Because it makes me legit. I know, it's kind of crazy. Plus, the fact that I've written the risk chapter of the PMBOK means that I actually look more legitimate when I'm doing things like, teaching a lot of PMP prep, which is a lot of what I do these days. Yeah, those kinds of things actually just go a long way towards making sure that you are the authority. So you try to identify as many risks as you possibly can. By the way, you will never identify all risk. It cannot be done. You can't do it. You'll never identify all risk. There's always one more. If you've seen the new movie Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt, you'll know, hadn't considered that we might have a war in the future where they come back and recruit our folks from the present. That was not on my radar. And yet, could it happen? My sci-fi friends would agree. Do not watch that movie, says Michael Small. He's warning everyone. Wow. Michael, I have not yet watched the whole thing. I'm only about 20 minutes in. So careful with the spoiler alerts. But look at the risks. The second half is stupid. Okay, wow. And so I've got Siskel, I've got Ebert, I've got my movie critics online. That's a good thing. But you need to identify as many risks as possible and not one-word answers. And look at the way that people correct this sometimes. We may lose a team member hurting the schedule. That's a thin risk. But look at the last one up here. Look at the last one. Oh, wow. So riddle me this, Batman. Take a look at the last one. What's the joy? And I do mean joy. Oh, we'll go to that, Conrad. That's a really good point. What's the joy of the last risk event? What's the joy of the last risk event I've got up on the screen right now? And there is joy there. You actually reads it. Right. It gets down to the impact. It gives you everything. It's specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time constrained. It works. It gives you something to manage. We all claim that we want to manage more stuff, and yet we don't get to. And it's not because we have all this responsibility and no authority. That's not the problem. The real problem we face is that we have all this responsibility and we don't seize the authority that is granted to us. There's an extraordinarily high level of authority that we actually have if we're willing to grab it. Now I need to track back because there was one comment in the chat. Oh, what do you think about the building collapse in Miami and what it says about a risk management failure? It says everything about a risk management failure, particularly, and we don't know, and I admit that I don't know, what's going on right now to evaluate the other buildings that are in that complex, the other condos and so forth. And you realize these are not like nickel and dime condominiums. These are $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million condominiums. They're very expensive. And what it says to me now is, yes, it was a monstrous failure of risk identification. And if that ever fails again to the same degree or in the same fashion, yeah, the lawsuits, well, even now the lawsuits will be endless. But the fact of the matter is they now have some sense that it's a past event. And this goes to the earlier comment about probability. We know that it can happen. When something has never happened before in our framework, in our life, we look at it and say, well, it could happen, and generally pop it into the remote probability category. But when it happens, real time, COVID, when it happens, real time, the condo collapse, then all of a sudden, the probability escalates. Why? Because we have proven that it can happen. It can happen. Now, because it can happen, it means that we now have to put it on our regular reviews of what can happen. Intriguingly, there are some risks that have never happened, and we still have analyzed them. The classic being Qantas Airlines constantly is analyzing why they've never had a fatal crash. Because everyone else in the airline industry has had a fatal crash. So there is a probability out there, but only if we have real detail. Only if we have real detail can we ever begin to explore the joys of the probabilities. Look at that car. This is not the same car, by the way. Yeah. Okay. You just sunk this thing into a giant mud hole. What's the bad thing that may happen and the impact it may cause? You just sunk this beautiful car into a giant mud hole. Towing. Yeah, towing's going to be very expensive, especially if that mud hole dries out. Yeah. You're going to be delayed. Yeah, you're not going to make it downtown in a timely fashion. You're going to have a broken axle getting it out of the hole. Now, take note. I may get stuck in the mud hole, causing me to break my axle getting it out. I may get stuck in a mud hole, having a really good excuse to buy new shoes. Yeah. I may get stuck in a mud hole, incurring more damage from towing. You go down the whole list, and the beauty of it is, as you start building the list, it's comforting. It is. It's kind of crazy comforting, but it's comforting. Oh, I may get stuck in a mud hole and continue to sink into oblivion. I don't make this crap up. I have like the world's weirdest life. We were at a band show, not rock and roll, high school marching bands. We were at a band show. Some of you have been through these things. And it had been a rainy, rainy day. And we were walking, my in-laws along with me. Band, B-A-N-D show. Sorry, Andy. Yeah, a band show. High school marching band show. And as we were walking across the parking lot to get to the show, here's one that you would not put on your list of risks if you didn't hear it before. Yeah. My mother-in-law, a woman I like a lot, my mother-in-law fell into a sinkhole. She actually created the sinkhole. And mind you, this is a little 95-pound woman. She just and disappeared down into the parking lot. How bizarre is that? Can that actually happen? Yeah. Oh, what's the probability? And notice what you're basing your own probability on. Past experience. Well, I've never seen that happen. That's downright insane. I've never seen it happen until it actually happened to my mother-in-law. Unbelievable. Oh, she was fine. Yeah, fortunately, my youngest son, who's on the athletic side, was with us and kind of jumped down in the hole and hoisted her out and lifted her up to somebody else, and then chased the fire department and got them to put a little ring around the sinkhole so that nobody else would fall into the same hole. And Jackie, I do need to do that at some point. But the details, once you know the details of how things like this happen, it's, oh, okay, but she's all right. And that washes away a lot of the fear. When it comes to risk, identifying risk, we want to make sure that we had just kind of the whole package in terms of understanding the bad thing that may happen. So we might lose a team member. Okay. There are a handful of ways in which, yeah, I agree with you, but that's why my son is my son and I'm me. Yeah. Details tell us what we have to manage. In case you're wondering what I'm responding to, it says jumping into a sinkhole is risky. They keep sinking. Yeah. But we may lose a team member. then we can manage the loss of the team member. But it goes to the nature of that loss. Why might we lose a team member? Orlando, I'm getting some feedback from your audio. If you could mute yourself, that would be a beautiful and a wonderful thing. Okay.
Done.
Thank you. It was all very, yeah, it's those aliens. Exactly. They are coming. Yeah. We may lose a team member because they're so frustrated with the overtime, they're ready to quit, forcing us to recruit new team members internally. Look at this. Welcome to today. Yeah. Organizations all over the planet. We're hiring. Yeah, well, it's showtime, quite frankly. Which of the 5 whys do you include into the risk events as the root cause? Just looking at the clock and making sure I have time to have this conversation. Okay, yeah, let's go there. Which of the 5 whys? The 5 whys, when you go through the 5 whys and just you identify the risk clearly as the bad thing that may happen and the impact it may cause, you make sure you do the full-blown risk statement, and then you ask why. And you ask, okay, and this is why, what's his name? Ishikawa. This is why Ishikawa, when he came up with the Ishikawa diagram or the cause and effect diagram or the fishbone diagram, call it what you want to call it. But when he came up with that, said basically what you want to look at is the different fishbones. Originally, it was man, method, material, machine. Now, that's sexist now. So human, method, material, machine. And you go through and you say, why? 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 What's a human reason? Okay. Why? And you go out the 5 whys there. And then you do the human reason and you move out to the next one, which is method. Method. Why? What process reasons? And you keep going. What happens is when you finish going through the entire different array of categories, you know what you're going to see over and over and over again? One particular cause. It's that one repeated cause. It's that one that keeps hammering over and over and over again that you go, oh, wow, that must be the, dare I say, root cause. It's at least a nice place to jump onto that bandwagon. It's a place to go ahead and get started going down that road. Yeah. What's the early warning sign? How do you know you're going to lose a team member? What's the early warning sign? Now, and actually, Catherine actually clairvoyantly said frustrated with overtime and ridiculous, unrealistic deadlines imposed by management. Go ahead and get it out of your system, Catherine. Come on, it's fine. But what's intriguing about that is, how do you know somebody's leaving? Oh, because they're living the life right now. They're out there living large. Okay. Any other reasons you think they might be bailing on you? The early warning signs? Oh, they've got tons of administrative extra work. Somebody's just not paying attention to anything. They sit in the meetings, just having a time. Participation drops off. Participation is non-existent. Taking a lot of leave. They brought stuff to your attention. You're like, I don't care. And those kinds of things. They're disengaged. Yeah, those are good signs. They're going out for interviews. They're wearing a tie. Yeah, the early warning signs. Yeah, we want to. If we've got good detail on the nature of the risk itself, those are early warning signs that somebody is about to head for the hills. They are running. They're going as far and as fast as they possibly can. So the question becomes, what's the big risk event? Carl, there are no big risk events. You said so right here on the slide. And I said, with the exception of the BFL. BFL. Most of you don't know what BFL is. Some of you are associated because you're NCI. Some of you are associated with FNL, Frederick National Labs. Do you know you're not the only national labs in the country? In fact, you're among the most recent. Go back a little further in time. I had the joy of teaching for one of the other national labs, Sandia. Some of you know what Sandia is. There are nuclear friends. Yeah, there are nuclear friends. So, I ask in that group a very simple thing. What's the big risk event? I said, in your organization, what's the worst thing that could happen? A guy raised his hand. I said, you've got one? You've actually got a big one? And he said, yeah, BFL. And I said, BFL? What's the BFL? And he said, that's the blinding flash of light. Wow. In a nuclear facility, I'm thinking that's probably the one you'd want to pin down. Yeah. Oh, and yes, I know that FNL is the only one that is dedicated to biomedical research. But the point being is, we need to know for our organization, for the world around us, what is the big risk event. But that's not going to be the one that matters. The one that's going to matter is buried someplace in a whole pile of little risk events. We need to focus on the little risk events. Oh, Carl, we do that. We have a checklist. I will find you. I will hunt you down in your sleep. I'm not against checklists. Atul Gawande wrote the book, The Checklist Manifesto, and it's a great book, but it's not going to do the job. No, checklists don't do it. In fact, the problem I have with checklists for risk is they tend to give us a false sense of security. They do. They make us believe that somehow we're going to be able to manage, handle, cope with whatever comes down. Why? Because we got the list. No. No, the reality is the little risks, they do make us lazy. Now, checklists don't make us lazy per se, but yeah, well, actually, you're probably right. They do make us lazy. But the key is they should be the jumping off point, the starting point. And the reality is, who's got the best risk information? The team members. Yeah. Team members. Team members have the best risk information. It staggered me when one big telecom I worked with actually said, Carl, we've gone one step further on risk. We've opened a risk office in Houston. And I said, wrong answer. Risk is not a centralized activity. Do you know who has the best information on risk? Matthew Packard. Matthew Packard has the best information on risk. Catherine Kirk has the best information on risk. Catherine Jordan has the best information on risk. Individuals, wow. Yeah, exactly. Because if you only look at the risks in the checklist, you're going to miss stuff. Now, mind you, the checklist is a great jumping off point, but it's two completely separate activities. One is the checklist, and one is the actual identification of risks. So we need to clarify the risk events. And you might think, oh, that's normal. PMI did a study mid-1990s, asked the big question, what is the number one risk on projects? It was the number one risk then. It's the number one risk today. And do you know what that number one risk is on projects? We may have unclear requirements leading to missed requirements. How boring is that? Yeah. The checklists are, and that's a good way of putting it, Catherine. It is, even though they're rigorous about following the checklists, it's not enough. It's not the be all and end all. The be all and end all is when you get all your team members to actually explore and share their risk events. And that's one of the harder parts as well, getting people to freely share their risk events. And the hard part of that is the word freely. People don't want to share risk events. Look at your life. You could get cancer. Could happen. Happens to a lot of people. Runs rampant in my family. Yeah. You could get cancer. What's the outcome? What's the outcome? You get cancer. You could get cancer causing what? A lot of different outcomes. Yeah, thank you, Denise. Yeah, it could go as far as death. And I like Paul's point here. You get poor and die. Yeah. Now we all die eventually. True. My father was a cancer victim. He got cancer at age 51, passed away at age 87. And it wasn't the cancer that killed him. My sister got cancer when she was 50. She's still with us. She's 65. Oh, yeah. There are dozens of possible outcomes. You can overcome it. You can survive. You can keep going. You can find out you had friends you didn't know you had. Yeah, absolutely. Look at the list. Look at the list. Yeah, and yeah, if you would please get on that, Liang, that would be a really nice thing. Liang said, we can cure cancer in our lifetime. You can get cancer and survive. Talk to my sister. Oh, now, other people in my family, the rest of them, let's see. My mother got cancer and passed. My father-in-law got cancer and passed. Dad, sister, both still with us. Me, we're still waiting. It's interesting because we're always looking at, okay, what are the outcomes? But we only look at the outcomes when we can actually identify the risk events. What are the little pieces? What are those little pieces? And if we don't identify those little pieces and take them seriously, then we're never really going to be able to manage risk. The warning signs. I love the degrees of warning signs. My grocery store parking lot has these glow-in-the-dark warning signs. They have little stop signs all throughout the grocery store at the crosswalks. Not uncommon. But every one of those little stop signs has flashing lights around the edge. Now, it's the only place I've ever seen flashing lights around the edge. Don't even talk to me about that, Kelsey. Flashing lights around the edge to make you know that's a stop sign. We expect you to stop. Now, it's interesting, though, because sometimes those warning signs don't work so well. Oh, Kelsey was making the point. By the way, let's take a moment, if we might, as good PMI members and such, we should all give Kelsey her moment in the sun. Take one step back. Kelsey, got word yesterday or today, can't remember which, but yesterday or today, that Kelsey not only passed the PMP, but did so above target all the way around. Yeah, she crushed this baby. My students. But I was really excited. Yay, Kelsey. Yeah, we need to stop and take that moment But when it comes to risk, what we need to recognize how big how big do we need those signs to be? Railroad crossing signs in my hometown ranged from the little white sign, just two crossed pieces of lumber like this at the railroad crossings out in the sticks in the rural areas. Downtown, they've got the gates, they've got everything else, they got the flashing lights, but the warning signs. Oh, somebody made the comment earlier. The low gas ding. Now, some of you have cars that are so fancy, they actually not only give you a ding, they start sending up a little warning message of how many miles remain in your tank. How many miles are still lingering in your gas tank? I love those. I was driving with my father-in-law, God rest his soul, but I was driving along with my father-in-law not long after my wife and I got married. And obviously we didn't have distance to empty back then. But I was driving along and it went ding. And he said, "Are you going to be okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I just got to make it down to Figgy's store." I said, "Okay." And then it went ding, ding, ding. He said, "You sure you're going to be okay?" "We just passed the gas station." "Nah, just got to make it down to Figgy's store." With my father-in-law by my side, I ran out of gas on Route 180 outside Frederick, Maryland. Yeah, it's one of those things. Is it enough of a warning sign? Are we giving the warning signs early enough? Are we giving them clearly enough? Are we sending the right messages? Do you know that there's a difference between when your engine light goes off and when your engine light goes off and starts flashing? Do any of you know the difference between those two? One, your engine light is off and steady. The other one, it is blinking wildly. Do you know the difference? Blinking is worse. Thanks, Conrad. That's pretty much what I was looking for. Yeah. Blinking, the blinking engine light means pull your car off to the side of the road and get a tow truck. Yeah, it's saying goodbye. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's doing. But we should know these things and we should set up our triggers in such a fashion that we're the ones who clearly identify for our team members, hey, if you've got a blinking engine light, pull off to the side of the road. And we have plenty of those at NCI. We have warnings. We have the refrigerators in some of the labs are just amazing in terms of the fact that they warn and they warn and they warn, and it becomes a very, very big deal. You want to know if we've got risks, we've got them well identified. We then need warning signs to let people know, hey, if it is doing this, we need to just pay a little more attention. It's the language. Do you speak risk? Issues. Drives me crazy in a meeting when somebody says, oh, that's a big issue. It's like, no, it's a risk. It hasn't happened to us yet. It's a risk. It's a future phenomenon which has not yet occurred. Right, I said it's an issue. And my head explodes. Symptoms. We become the language police here. It's up to us to actually say a symptom means that it's already manifesting itself, but it has not yet actually gone full blown. Triggers are the earlier warning signs. They're the earlier warning signs. Yeah. A symptom's still a warning sign, but a trigger is a much earlier warning sign. It's, hey, just so you know, there could be trouble up ahead. Yeah, triggers. You're hitting the rumble strips, a classic trigger at the side of the road. You hit those rumble strips. What should that be saying to you? Does it say you're about to wreck and you're going to die? Is that what it says every time you hit the rumble strips? Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Solid engine light is a trigger. Flashing engine light is a symptom. Excellent. That was really nicely said, Alyssa. That was good. No, it does say wake up. Okay, it doesn't mean you're going to die a grisly and horrible death, but it does mean, hey, wake up. Let's go. Pay attention. Yeah, it isn't nearly as bad as, oh my gosh, I'm falling into the ditch. There's a big distinction between those. When you determine the language, you rule, not just own, you rule the culture. Somebody very early on in the conversation asked a question and made a comment about risk culture. You want to create a culture, be the person who writes the risk dictionary. You want to create a risk culture? This is the first step. It's the one where you win. You do. Triumph. OH, Doug. OH. But the real key here is you want to make sure you create the language, you define it for others, and then you reinforce the language. We really need to keep doing that. We do need to constantly reinforce, re-energize, and tell people, hey, don't call it an issue. It's a risk. The more we do to actually ensure that others speak that same language, the easier it becomes to manage risk, the easier it becomes to have the risk conversation, and you also start building some alliances. You do. Oh, quick pop quiz kind of question. And that is 7 days late. Big project. Big project. 7 days late. Big deal? Just looking for a yes or a no. Right. It does depend. Who defines it? You do. And once you define it, once you define all those, the thresholds of pain, then you're building alliances. You are. You get people to the same language. You get them to see that you are a consistent product. And that's a huge win. With that, I've been given the heads up. Hey, here we are. That's my email address. That's my phone number. And the answer is really. Send me an email. I will always get back to you in 24 hours. If I didn't get back to you in 24 hours, I'm sitting in your spam folder. I guarantee you. Yeah, I'm in there. So with that in hand, as questions surface, as questions arise, you know where to find me. And anything I can do to facilitate your efforts, I am the cost of an email. Also, just coming up first week of August, PMP prep class. Love to have you if you're not already there.